Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, wherever you are in the world. I am just Mike, and you are watching and you are listening to episode 6 of the Rock On Wild Show. And as you can see on the title, I will be going over a show that I completely forgot about when I was going over my big long list of television shows in episode 4. And that is a show called Firefly. I do have the DVD set, but I don't have it here with me at this very moment. So I will go over that show on episode 6 of the Rock On Wild. Also, I'll be going over This Day in Music, also Today in Movies and TV. And I'm going to add a little bit of an extra thing called On This Day in Professional Wrestling, seeing as I talked about professional wrestling on the past episode. And I'm going to react to a movie review called The Amazing Spider-Man 2. So, let's get this show underway. We're almost 90 seconds in to episode 6 of the Rock Out Wild, and I just want to know, how are you all doing today? Today, as I record this, it is January 16th, 2025, but this episode of the Rock Out Wild Show will air on a later date, and that will be aired on February 5th, 2025. So, let's talk about the show that I completely forgot about on episode 4, and that is Firefly. So, Firefly is one of my favorite shows of all time. It's very underrated, and it sucks it got canceled. But what is this show about? Well, Firefly takes place about 500 years into the future, and in the future, you have the Alliance, which is the government of America and China, and they have grouped together. Now they are known as the Alliance. And at this point, Earth is very much all burnt out. It couldn't sustain the numbers, it couldn't sustain the population, so all the civilians migrated to another solar system with many planets and moons. And the Alliance controls most, if not some, of the planets. And with the ones, and with the civilians that have this outer realm of planets and moons and stuff like that, they feel more like a Western. They're a little bit more isolated. There is a group of people that don't want the Alliance government control. So there lies the civil war of this show that creates the conflict and the tension in the grand scheme of things. But in the smaller story of this whole schmozzle, you have a group of about 9 characters in the spaceship called Serenity. You have the captain, who is Captain Malcolm Reynolds, played by Nathan Fillion, and he fought for the independence, where his side just got obliterated by the Alliance. So now he just does what he can to survive day by day, trying to make a living, trying to make ends meet with transport and thievery and smuggling, stuff like that. And what makes his character so special and unique in a way is that the character is only written one way, one note, but the actor, Nathan Fillion, brought his own shtick to the character that made the whole package a complete one. He is written to be like a bit of a bitter kind of person and a bit damaged in a way, and he is, don't get me wrong, he is damaged and bitter in a way, but Nathan Fillion, his performance in this movie is just absolutely incredible. He just has this charismatic on-screen presence that is felt, and he brought that sarcastic sense of humor, and he adds a lot of likability to the role. You like the guy, but the character itself is just not nice. And Nathan Fillion himself said in one of the extras of the DVD is that he is so not this guy that he's playing. So So Nathan Fillion just goes all in. He goes the extra mile, and it works. Then you got his sidekick, Gina Torres as Zoe, who is also a war veteran like the captain. And Zoe is a complete, absolute badass. Her and Malcolm Reynolds work well together. Their sarcastic dialogue back and forth is one of the best things about the show. She is second in command, and it feels like that. Say if something happens to Malcolm Reynolds, Zoe is more than capable to lead the crew. And Zoe is also married to the pilot of the ship, Wash, played by Alan Tudyk. And Wash is pretty much the essential comedic relief of the show. Yes, other characters you can say are comedic relief, but in this show, Wash is the definition of comedic relief. And the dynamics of his relationship with Zoe, I thought worked really well. Wash is not a war veteran. He's not a fighter. Zoe is a war veteran. She is a fighter. So that back and forth there is one of the most entertaining aspects of the show. Their dialogue, their back and forth, their conversations works tremendously in Firefly. Then you got Shepard Book, played by Ron Glass, God rest his soul. He is the preacher on the ship, and Malcolm didn't know what to make of having a preacher on board, but after a while, he goes along with it. He is very much the conscience of the show, while everyone else is pretty much breaking the law and like smuggling and thieving and stuff like that. And so he is the voice of reason. And I like that his past remains a mystery. He wasn't always a shepherd, and the show never revealed his past at all. And again, I say I like that because there has to be someone on that show that has some sort of mystery to them, and that's what Shepard Book is. Then you got one of my favorite characters on the show, Jane, played by Adam Baldwin. He's pretty much the mercenary in the muscle of the show. And you got Anara, played by Marina Baccarin. She is pretty much, from a character standpoint, the credible person on the crew. She pretty much has respect on her name. She is an ambassador. She has an ambassador status, and she is a registered companion. In layman's terms, she is not familiar. I'm not comfortable with using the WHORE word. She has a bit of tension with Malcolm Reynolds in the show, and you could tell that there is something there. They have a thing for each other, and they both have really good chemistry with one another. And I like that by the end of it all, they never really got together as a couple. They always kept each other distant while remaining close in the same time. Then you got Kaylee, played by Canadian actress Jewel State. She is the engineer on the ship. She is the genius engineer of Serenity. She keeps the thing flying, and she is really good at it. And of course, you got Simon Tan, played by Shawn Mayer. He is a really prestigious doctor who brings cargo on board, and you're unsure what it is, and we find out that it is his sister, River Tam. He's giving up his entire fortune to find his sister because his sister was being held in a government facility who all these groups of people pretty much messed and poked at her brain. River is essentially the main centric character of the whole show when it comes to the plot. What did they do? Well, that's the progression of what the show was all about. And to me, when I look at Firefly, this is the most realistic, grounded Western sci-fi show that takes place in the future. And one of the great aspects of Firefly is that this show has no aliens. It's a sci-fi show with no aliens, but the only thing that comes close are these things called reavers, but you don't know exactly what they might be at all. and you don't see them very often. So that element of the show has a lot of mystery around it. And then you got the soundtrack, the music in Firefly. That opening theme song just stays with you, it sticks with you. And that song is really all about the character of Malcolm Reynolds when you really listen to the lyrics of it. And throughout the entire show, you have great music in it, and it's a Western twang with Asian inspiration music sprinkled in here and there. And this show looks fantastic. It's a well shot series all around. The cinematography is outstanding. It also has this cheese factor about it that works. Uh, you have a little bit of that lens flare going on where the camera zooms in and out, being a little bit off on screen and being a little bit out of focus, but it's all done on purpose. And it adds to the experience watching the show. It's well directed show throughout each episode, and then it's a well written show as well. And I love how each episode feels different from one another. Not one feels the same, and pretty much nearly every episode of the series is a standout episode. But if I had to narrow it down and pick my top 5 episodes of Firefly, the ones that I feel that you should definitely check out the most, this is my list. At number 5 is one of the last episodes of the series, Objects in Space, where you have guest starring Richard Brooks as this bounty hunter going after Simon and River Tam. And there's things about Richard Brooks' character, the bounty hunter character, that are very unsettling. At number 4, The Message. This episode pretty much starts off with a big, humongous piece of cargo, and then we find out that this piece of cargo has to do with someone that Mal and Zoe knew from the past. So I like the revelations going on in that episode as well. At number 3, the 2-hour pilot Serenity. This is the introduction episode, and this episode really introduces every character the right way, I think. A little bit more so than the train job, which is why I don't have the train job on here. Number 2 on my top 5 list of Firefly favorite episodes is Ariel. And in this episode, we get to know more about what the government has been doing to River Tam. And then you get the betrayal of, well, spoiler alert. Let's just say there's a thing going on with Jane and Malcolm Reynolds that culminates by the end of the episode. And it's really heartbreaking, yet it feels right in the same time. And my number 1 favorite episode of Firefly, I think a lot of people, I'd say if you talk to every hardcore Firefly fan out there, odds are one of their favorites, and it's my number 1 favorite episode of the entire series. That is Out of Gas. This episode is pretty much about the ship known as Serenity. What happens is that something happened to the ship and now it's broken, and Captain Malcolm Reynolds has to fix it, and Kaylee is working at it. She says that the ship needs a new part, so Malcolm has to get the part from another group of people who are not the most pleasant type of people. So, and what I like about Out of Gas is that this episode takes you back in time, and it introduces us to the characters of the show and how they got to the ship Serenity. And that's why Out of Gas is my number 1 favorite Firefly episode of all time. And if I had to rate the overall show known as Firefly, it's an easy 10 out of 10. This is a flawless show. It sucks it got canceled, and it's one of my favorite shows of all time. So that is my review for Firefly? Maybe in a future episode, I will talk about the movie that happened 3 years later after the show got canceled called Serenity. So you never know. Maybe one day I will actually review a movie here on the Rock Out Wild show. You just never know. So with that out of the way, let's get on into this day in music. And I'm actually going to show a few of these. So I'm going to start presenting and share screening. This day in music. All right. Oh, and I am going to turn on my camera. I didn't turn on my camera yet. I need to turn on my camera. Hold on a second. How in God's name do I turn on my camera? I actually forgot how to turn on my camera. Where do I go to turn on my camera? Oh, here we go. Aha! It was easy. It was right below. All right, so let's start share screening and look at on this day in not only movies, music, but also wrestling. And we'll start with music. So I'm going to start presenting, share screen, and see what's going on from the past on this day on January 16th, 2025 as I record this. Let's see. 2019. Lorna Doom, American musician Lorna Doom, passed away of cancer at age 61. She was the bass guitarist for the punk rock band The Germs. Their music was influential to many later punk rock acts. Germs guitarist Pat Smear went on to achieve greater fame, performing with Nirvana and the Foo Fighters. You learn something new every day. That was in 2019. 2013, Joe Strummer. It was announced that Joe Strummer was to have a city square named after him in Spain following a Facebook campaign. More than 2,000 residents of Granada, where the Clash frontman became a frequent visitor, signed a petition calling for him to be honored. City Hall officials agreed to the proposals, and a square in the area was set to be renamed Plaza de Joe Strummer. And I'll look at a couple of more here. 2009, Boy George was sentenced to 15 months in prison after being convicted of falsely imprisoning a male escort. No, he didn't really want to hurt him. I know that. That was terrible. Oh my God. All right. Moving on. The Culture Club frontman denied the charge at Snaresbrook Crown Court and claimed the victim, Norwegian Audun Carlsen, who is 29, had stolen photos from his laptop. Ooh. The singer told police he invited Carlsen back to his home after a cocaine-fueled pornographic photo shoot in January 2007 because he suspected the Norwegian of stealing pictures from his computer. Yikes. I don't know why I'm going over this one. He admitted handcuffing Carlsen to a wall in April 2007, but said he did so in order to trace the missing property. And Radiohead. Radiohead, back in 2008, on this day of January 16th, 2025, they were forced to abandon an intimate gig at Rough Trade East Records in London after police raised safety fears. The band moved the gig to a nearby club after over 1,500 fans turned up after the event was announced in the morning, promised tickets to the first 200 fans. Yikes, 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 yikes. So that's pretty much a couple of things that happened on this day in music. Now let's look at today in movies and TV history. And I'll go over a few of them that happened on this day, January 16th. We got in 1949, KMBH, now KMBC, TV Channel 4 in Los Angeles, first broadcast. Also in 1949, WTOP, now WUSA, TV Channel 9 in Washington, D.C., first broadcast. In 1953, KXLY TV Channel 4 in Spokane, Washington begins broadcasting. That's ABC CBS. In 1954, Richard Rodgers and Oscar Hammerstein's musical South Pacific, starring Mary Martin and Izzo Pinza, closes at the Majestic Theater in New York City after 1928 performances, winning 10 Tony Awards and Putzler Prize. In 1962, shooting begins on Dr. No, the first James Bond movie. Bond. James Bond. In 1965, Outer Limits last airs on ABC TV. In 1973, NBC presents the 440th and final showing of Western TV series Bonanza. And in 1976, Donnie and Marie musical variety show premieres on ABC TV. And that's some of the things that happened on this day in TV and film. On January 16th, 2025. Now, let's go look at some of the things that happened in wrestling. So, all right. So, here are some of the things that happened in professional wrestling where it's like WWE, WWF, ECW, WCW, whatnot. On January 16th, in 1992, Arn Anderson and Bobby Eaton defeat Dustin Rhodes and Ricky Steamboat to win the WCW World Tag Team Champions in Jacksonville, in Florida. 1999, Taz retained the ECW World Championship against Chris Candido and then Shane Douglas at ECW House Party in Philadelphia. In the year 2000, WCW presented the sold-out pay-per-view in Cincinnati, Ohio. The main event saw The Invisible Man, who defeated Sid Vicious for the WCW World Heavyweight title in the main event. The win came despite the fact that The Invisible Man had signaled his intention to leave the promotion the next day. Management believed giving him the title win would change his mind. It didn't. Also on the card, Oklahoma, Ed Ferreira pinned Medusa for the WCW Cruiserweight Championship. In 2001, Stone Cold Steve Austin, The Rock, and The Undertaker defeated WWF champion Kurt Angle, Kane, and Rikishi in a six-man tag team main event of the WWF SmackDown taping in Chicago. There's a couple of these in 2005. Jeff Jarrett retained the NWA World Heavyweight title against Monty Brown in the main event of TNA Final Resolution in Orlando, Florida. Also in 2005, at a live event in Winnipeg, Manitoba, Canada, the WWE World Tag Team Champions changed hands when La Resistance, Rob Conway, and Sylvester Grenier defeated William Regal and Jonathan Coachman. who was substituting for an injured Eugene at the time. I'll go over up to 2018 here. In 2006, Edge retained the WWE Championship against Nature Boy Ric Flair in a TLC match on an episode of WWE Raw from Raleigh in North Carolina. In 2009, Hardcore Holly was released from WWE after a 16-year stint with the company. In 2012, Jack Swagger defeated Zack Ryder for the WWE United States Championship on Raw from Anaheim, California. In 2014, TNA taped two special events, or should I say episodes. TNA taped two episodes of Impact themed under the Genesis name. Most notably, the event was the Fun Night in TNA for Sting, who had worked for the company since 2003. He lost matches to Ethan Carter III and Magnus. And in 2018, Bobby Roode, the Pride of Peterborough, defeated Jinder Mahal for the WWE United States Championship on SmackDown live from Laredo, Texas. So that was pretty much on this day of January 16th, 2025. And for the very last segment of episode 6 of the Rock on Wild Show, I am going to react to an old movie review of mine that was uploaded on May 8th, 2014. This is for The Amazing Spider-Man 2. So I'm going to view on YouTube. Turn up the volume. Start share screening. All right, let's see. All right. Present. Share screen. Amazing Spider-Man 2. Make sure I got the sound on. Perfect. All right. And let's react to this thing called The Amazing Spider-Man 2 movie review back almost 11 years ago. Oh my God. Oh my God. I look young there. Let's do this thing. 3, 2, 1, action.
You know what's really funny and ironic about this movie is that the director is named Mark Webb. That's some funny shit right there. So that
was one awkward introduction.
The Amazing Spider-Man 2 stars Andrew Garfield as Peter Parker, aka Spider-Man, where he pretty much has to run the gauntlet to destroy villains in the process of fighting the evil corporation that's known as Oscorp. And we've seen this kind of stuff before where, this evil corporation is testing on whatever it might be. I'm not going to spoil anything just in case you watch it. But just that alone is cliche. I've seen this stuff before. Yes, it was a predictable movie, but I did enjoy this movie. This is also one of those movies I feel like I could nitpick a lot of it because some of the things really didn't sit right with me, and I'll explain all that later on in this review. But the one thing I actually did enjoy about this movie was the acting. Andrew Garfield, who plays Spider-Man in this movie, is actually the best Spider-Man. I feel like he's a lot more believable and convincing than Tobey Maguire is.
Keep in mind, Tom Holland wasn't Spider-Man at all just yet.
Because to me, he looks like Peter Parker. He looks like the guy that's behind the suit of Spider-Man. And a lot of it has to do with the way he is, the way he can.
Also, looking back at this now, I kind of disagree with myself. I rather prefer Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man than Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man. So it's amazing what almost 11 years can do with your takes on things.
Carries himself as a character with his attitude and persona. And I actually like the emotional side of Andrew Garfield as well. And like I said,
Andrew
he
Garfield's a good
nails it
actor, though.
in his performance, in his role as Peter Parker. And his girlfriend in this movie, Gwen Stacy, who's played by Emma Stone, is also really good. And I love the chemistry between the two of them, and how they go back and forth. They split up, they get back together, they split up again, they come back together. So they actually, to me, they look like a cute couple, and they done a really good job. I'll get into the villains. Jamie Foxx, who played Max Dillon, aka Electro. I thought he was so well in the character. This to me, when I look at Jamie
Underutilized.
Foxx, this almost feels like a different role he's playing than he does in most movies. In this one,
Good
he
role,
plays
but
this
underused.
this Star Trek, this starstruck
Starstruck.
kind of guy who's in love with Spider-Man, who wants to be Spider-Man, who's inspired by him a lot,
Mhm.
and he ends up being one of his arch enemies in the movie that plays out later on in the movie. And even when he was Electro, he actually made a character to the villain. So that was pretty interesting what Jimmy Fox done there as well. And the way Electro looked was amazing.
I agree with.
It's like
Yeah.
see-through blue, and I can like see right through his skin. It was really incredible. This even the CGI stuff, the way it was all done, the action sequences, yada yada. I'll get to all that later on.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Uh, with that being said, you also had Dane Deanhan, who played Harry Osborn,
Dane
aka the
DeHaan.
Green Goblin. You also had Felicia Jones as Felicia. Yeah, you had
Yep.
Paul Giamatti, who was only in it for a few seconds,
I know.
and you also had really good actors like Sally Field, who played Aunt May.
Sally Field, yep.
Nothing short of amazing. So when it comes to the acting department, it was really good.
Yeah, not bad.
However, this movie did have its problems as
Here we
well.
go.
One, I thought the tone of this movie was kind of all over the place.
Hmm.
Even though they'd done comedy pretty good, it just felt too much of a Saturday morning cartoon in the beginning. And as the movie progressed, it got into the whole drama side, the romantic comedy side, and the stuff after that with the action sequences. This is stuff now for a more mature audience than it was at the beginning, where I felt like this is something for kids. So it's a back and forth mesh of too much of genres going into this one movie. It just felt like they were all slammed together. It
Yeah.
really had
Hmm.
no flow to it at all. I thought that was a big problem. And another big problem with this movie is that it kind of felt like they could have done more with their villains, even with Electro. They could have developed a lot more with him. Even
Hmm.
Dane Deanhan, they could have developed a lot more with him. And with
DeHaan.
that being said, the storyline between Harry Osborn and Peter Parker just felt too rushed. I think there was a missed opportunity here to probably go for the next Spider-Man movie to build that up, to establish their relationship. And then Harry Osborn would turn into the Green Goblin. Instead, they just decided to put him in here at the end and have him fight, and there he goes.
Here it goes.
It was just, oh, there were a lot of, like I said, missed opportunities, and I was disappointed the way they executed some of these things, even at the end, where it left you
You
on
know,
that sad note that someone you loved had died. I'm not going to say who, I'm not going to spoil it for you, but it just kills me that what they could have done to develop the next movie, or whatever it is, whatever they're setting up here. You could have had just Spider-Man retire. You
yeah,
just have
really.
him retire and have him make a comeback in the next movie. Instead, what do they decide to do? They decide to end this movie on the high note where Spider-Man returns. I'm I'm not complaining, but it just feels like there was a missed opportunity to develop a really good story going into the next Spider-Man movie. Just
Sure,
saying.
sure. Mhm.
So like I said, the setup of the villains was good, but just the execution of them felt very short, and they could have done a lot more, like I said. Um, but what I did really like about this movie is that the action sequences uh, actually looked all right.
Mhm.
The way the CGI was with
Actually
Elektra
pretty good.
was really great. The way Spider-Man would go from rooftop to rooftop to rooftop. You, the all that Spidey stuff, and stuff like that, and the slow motion effects. I think they were really cool in the movie as well. They added a little bit of flavor. Wasn't really enough to save the things that I wish they could have done a lot better, but it was still okay. It was an enjoyable movie to watch. I will give it that. It was entertaining. At times, it was a little suspenseful, but not too much. But was the Amazing Spider-Man amazing? No. It was, to me, an average kind of 7 out of 10 kind of movie. So with that being said, I give this movie 70 points out of 100. And if you saw this movie, feel free to comment below and tell me what did you think about it. And also, with that being said, you can hit that subscribe button down below this video to get McRocked.
Yeah, so that's my reaction or lack thereof reaction of The Amazing Spider-Man 2. Yeah, it seems like I'm slowly but surely getting my stride back in 2014 when I started doing these movie reviews. I'm still figuring out, working out the kinks of structuring a movie review. I'm still a little bit all over the place, but starting off with this hypnosis, going to the positives and going into the negatives and your overall thoughts. That's pretty much how I done my movie reviews. So yeah, it's just, video by video, I start to improve slowly by slowly and bit by bit. Practice, a lot of practice. So that's it for episode 6 of the Rock on Wild Show. I am your host, Just Mike, and I want to end this episode with a quote. Never forget how far you've come, everything you have gotten through, all the times you have pushed on even when you felt you couldn't, all the mornings you got out of bed no matter how hard it was, all the times you wanted to give up, but you got through another day. Never forget how much strength you have learned and developed along the way. And on a final note, to all of you watching the Rock Out Wild Show episode 6, get plenty of rest and always do your best.